Hi everybody, you're listening to Comics and History, episode number 121, Spotlight on the Spectre in the Silver Age. And welcome to the show. I am your host, Brian J. Rygate, and class is back in session as we dive right back into the Spotlight series on the venerable DC Comics character, the Spectre. And I just need to make a correction/addition to the second part of episode number 119. I had said that in More Fun Comics number 75, after being resurrected by the Ring of Life, Jim Corrigan now had the ability to transform into the Spectre, while also being able to transform back into a mortal man. And in reading more Golden Age Spectre stories since recording that episode, I found that there were actually issues from the Golden Age in which the Spectre was able to exit and enter Jim Corrigan's body. And prior to that, I had thought that the idea of the Spectre being able to separate from Jim Corrigan was a concept which Gardner Fox had come up with in the Silver Age. But no, I was misinformed on that, and so I just want to add that here because I want to make this Spotlight series as complete as possible, especially given that the Spectre's publishing history has been sporadic at times, and he hasn't received as much love as he should for a character that is so old. Alright, so from here on out until the end of the year, I'm looking at running Spectre Spotlight episodes. So let's get into it. And for today's episode, we are looking at the Spectre in the Silver Age. It's actually a very short time period for the Spectre. We're only looking at a 4-year period and not even 20 complete solo Spectre stories. And fortunately, the entire Silver Age Spectre collection of stories has been collected and reprinted in various ways. If you're able to find Showcase Presents The Spectre Volume 1 at cover price, snap it up, because it is out of print and it is really expensive on the secondary market. I was looking on both Amazon and eBay, and copies of Showcase Presents the Spectre run for well over $100. And I find it really unfortunate that these Showcase volumes have not been made available on Comixology. I mean, I'm sure that there's some cost for DC, but still, you're looking at making digital copies of black and white art. And so I would think that the cost of making digital copies and then post them online would be less in comparison to going out and collecting other issues which are in full color. But there is that volume if you can find it. It also has the 4 issues of Wrath of the Spectre, which reprinted the Michael Fleischer Jim Aparo run from the 1970s, which I will, of course, be talking about here on episode number 122. But Showcase Presents the Spectre contains the 3 tryout issues in Showcase. It also contains the 10-issue first volume of the Spectre. And I want to say that it has at least a couple of Brave and the Bold issues which co-starred the Spectre. You can also go over to Comixology and the DC Comics app, and you can actually purchase digital copies of all of the Spectre's Brave and the Bold appearances for both the Silver and the Bronze Ages of comic books. I'm thinking as well, you should be able to get the Spectre's appearances in the two JLA JSC team-up stories which he appeared in digital, and they've also been collected in years past in the Crisis on Multiple Earths trades, which hopefully aren't quite so expensive on the secondary market now. But it's a quick read, certainly different from the Golden Age run. Because we're looking at the Silver Age here, we're looking at a kinder, gentler Spectre. So you're not getting the spirit of vengeance, the avenging spirit who punishes the guilty in horrific forms. Of course, we're looking at a period today on the show in which the Comics Code Authority was in full effect. But in case I forget to mention it near the end of the show, it is an enjoyable 4-year period for the Spectre. And what's really nice about the Silver Age Spectre is that there's a really nice continuity set down for the Spectre, and the relationship between Jim Corrigan and the Spectre is consistent throughout this time. And it's very clear in reading these stories, with the possible exception of one of the Brave and the Bold stories I'm going to talk about, that these stories are set on Earth 2, which makes sense given that the Spectre was one of the members of the JSA. I just wanted to point this out because a common misperception is that in the Silver Age comics continuity it was very loosey-goosey, whereas in the Bronze Age things started tightening up. And actually looking at the Spectre in the Silver and the Bronze Ages, that really shatters that misperception. I'm going to have fun on episode 122 talking about different stories and trying to place them on a particular Earth or Earths. Alright, so enough of the preamble. Let's get talking about the Spectre in the Silver Age. And just to recap, at the end of the Golden Age, the Spectre had been gone from the comic scene for a fair amount of time before the majority of other comic book superheroes faded into obscurity. The introduction of Percival Popp was meant to make the Spectre feature more kid-friendly, also to allay some concerns from parents about what their kids were reading. Unfortunately, though, Percival Popp has come to be seen as the beginning of the end for the Golden Age Spectre, as the Spectre did a complete 180, going from being this gothic, terrifying character to being a much gentler, softer character with a streak of comedy throughout the feature. And then with Jim Corrigan's departure from the feature in More Fun Comics number 90, that was really seen as the death knell for the Golden Age Spectre stories, because now Percival Popp became the star and the Spectre was reduced to an invisible, later visible guardian angel / sidekick to Percival Popp. And then of course the Spectre's feature in More Fun Comics ended in issue number 101. By the way, with regards to More Fun Comics number 90, that is a tough issue, as I mentioned in episode 119, because it's really not clear, given what we know about the Spectre and host relationship today, how Corrigan could just remove himself entirely and go off to Europe to fight. It's an issue which, to the best of my knowledge, only Roy Thomas has attempted to acknowledge and reconcile in general Spectre and DC Comics history in the years since that story was first produced. So then we get into the start of the Silver Age, and DC editor Julius Schwartz came up with the brilliant plan to revive Golden Age concepts, but to give them a science fiction background, and that necessitated giving characters such as the Flash, Green Lantern, Atom, the Hawks entirely new origin stories, new costumes, in some cases modified powers, but most importantly, all new alter egos. So Barry Allen replaced Jay Garrick, Hal Jordan replaced Alan Scott, Ray Palmer replaced Al Pratt, Katar and Shayera Hall replaced Carter and Shayera Hall. And I'm sure the conceit in the DC offices was that those kids and adolescents who had grown up reading the Golden Age superheroes had done just that. They'd grown up and they've moved beyond comics. And so the current generation of readers won't really have any idea as to who these Golden Age characters were. But lo and behold, a number of writers ended up sending in letters to DC and saying, okay, well, how do you explain the existence of characters like Alan Scott and Al Pratt and the human-born Hawkman and Hawkgirl? Now, Jay Garrick had already been explained rather neatly by Gardner Fox, who really was the Jeff Johns of the Golden and Silver Ages of comics. In showcase number 4, Barry Allen's first appearance, upon getting his speed powers, Barry was inspired by his favorite comic book character, Jay Garrick, to take up the name The Flash. But to extend that idea to Hal Jordan and Ray Palmer and the Thanagarians, probably a bit much of a stretch. So once again, it was Gardner Fox to the rescue, and he was the author of Flash of Two Worlds, in which Barry Allen accidentally transported himself to a parallel Earth, later to be designated Earth 2, where he met his comic book idol, Jay Garrick, realized that Garrick was a real flesh and blood person, and so the multiverse was born out of this story. And this would lead to other stories like Green Lantern Volume 2, number 40, in which Alan Scott and Hal Jordan teamed up. Led to a general interest in Golden Age characters, so in Brave and the Bold, Hourman and Dr. Fate would have a team-up story. And in a subsequent Barry J team-up, at the end of the story, a number of JSAers, including Wonder Woman and Alan Scott and Dr. Fate, all got together and said, let's follow Jay's lead in coming out of retirement, and better yet, let's reform the Justice Society of America. And that in turn led to the very first JLA JSA team-up story in Justice League of America numbers 21 and 22. Now, what did the Spectre have to do with all of what I've just said? Absolutely nothing. That's right. There was no sign of the Spectre anywhere. And